As you did it to the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me. When we read through St. Matthew, we notice that from chapter 5 onwards till chapter 7, Jesus gives instruction to his disciples and to people around how to live their life, dealing with various aspects of life, about prayer, about thanksgiving, about fasting, about all kinds of things. And then after that, once we reach chapter 8, we notice that Jesus is now on the move. He goes about, again, preaching the gospel and healing the sick. And it's very interesting to see the amount of healings that are reported by St. Matthew in chapter 8 and chapter 9. Just to mention those, first Jesus begins with healing the leper who comes to him and says, Lord, if you wish, you can make me heal. Jesus not only heals him, he touches him and heals him and says, be clean, this is what I wish. And then we find Jesus healing the centurion's servant, that famous saying of the centurion, Lord, I am not worthy that you should come to my house. Say but the word. And Jesus heals him and marvels at his faith. And then soon after that, we notice Jesus in the house of St. Peter. And his mother-in-law is sick with fever. Jesus heals her. And that evening, they brought to him all who were sick and all who were possessed by demons. And we are told in verse 16 of St. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 8, that he cast out the demons with a word and healed all who were sick. So the healing story continues like that. And then we come to today's healing story. Well, there are two people possessed by demons, and so they cannot speak. They are deaf and dumb. And then Jesus heals these people. And the Pharisees say he casts out devils by the help of Beelzebub, the master of all the demons. They refuse to accept Jesus. In spite of the fact that Jesus shows his mighty, almighty power in healing and in teaching, the authorities do not accept him, but all the riffraff, as it were, the tax collectors and the sinners and the poor and the sick and the lepers, they all come to Jesus. They want to listen to him. They want to touch him. And there is that woman who said yesterday's reading, if only I touch the hem of his garment, I shall be made well. And she is made well. Daughter, your faith has made you well. See the way Jesus addresses her. The compassion of God about which St. Matthew tells us in today's reading. He says in St. Matthew chapter 9:35, Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and every infirmity. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them, because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. And so we hear the concluding words of today's reading. Jesus tells his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Pray therefore the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. Now, who are these laborers? Is it the priests and the religious and the so-called laborers in the harvest of the Lord? Every one of us, every Christian, every human being is called to feel the compassion that Jesus felt and to go out and to teach people, to heal people, to bring them back from slavery to sin, to God, to a life of joy, a life of peace, a life of love. And we see all through history people taking on this job of compassion as Jesus did and going about all over the world without rest. The best example I can give you is that of Mother Teresa. For 20 years or so, she was teaching the children in the Loreto school, and then she became the headmistress in 1946. And there she was working as the headmistress of Loreto school in Italy. And she is now going to Darjeeling to make her annual retreat. I'm sure, even though we call that as the moment of the call on 10th September as she's traveling by train. I'm sure this was going on in her mind for quite some time. Living in India, even though she is in the Loreto convent and well-established convent and very respectable job and teaching very uniformed, beautiful looking uniformed children and all that, and yet her eyes were opened to the realities around. I'm sure she has seen the poor and the Bengal famine of 1943, which devastated Bengal. And then after that, all the communal clashes that happened. Mother was aware of all these and she felt uncomfortable living in comfort in that Loreto convent. And so as she is traveling, she felt the call of the Lord to be compassionate. And she decided, with the help of the Lord, to leave everything, to come out of the comfort of the Loreto convent and to come to the street with nothing in her hand, going about, helping people to die with dignity. That was her aim, first aim. So she found so many people dying on the roadside here and there. She would bring them to some kind of a shelter, which she found later on, and she was able to give them a decent death. And a number of young people joined her. Surprisingly, the young people have a lot of energy, they have a lot of generosity. And those people who saw Mother Teresa doing this, they also joined. And so we have the missionaries of charity today all over the world. I think there are about 5,000 of them going about all over the world doing works of charity. Well, from a Loreto nun, Mother Teresa became a mother to the poorest of the poor. Compassion of Christ can be seen in her, and that's why she is now Saint Mother Teresa. Of course, all of us are not Saint Mother Teresas. We are ordinary, normal human beings, isn't it? Struggling with our daily life to make both ends meet, and then, going on, dealing with all kinds of problems. But then, can we not open our eyes to look beyond our little house, little home, little ilaka, little neighborhood? Can't we look? Can we not notice? The problem with today's world is that we don't notice and we don't feel. Somehow our hearts don't feel much. People are dying there in Manipur. People are dying there in Ukraine, in Russia. Who bothers? Well, there may be some people who bother. And some people are so silent about it. Some people don't feel anything. They don't involve themselves in it. Are we doing something? Well, forget about people who are far away. In our neighborhood, are there not people who are struggling? People who are lonely? People who are sad, who are depressed? People who are hungry? Are we feeling any compassion? Well, this is a question to be asked, especially if you are a Christian. You need to feel compassion. I met Mother Teresa just the year before she died. I was studying in Rome and I met her. And you know what she told me? She told me the last words that Jesus uttered to the good people at the last judgment. She says, "Truly I say to you, as you did it to the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me." Mother Teresa took hold of my hand and she counted on my fingers saying, "Father, remember what Jesus said, you did it to me." These 5 fingers will remind you what Jesus said, you did it to me. Whatever you do to the least of these brethren, you do it to me. That's what Jesus said. Can we become a little more compassionate in our life, starting with our family members and starting with our neighbors, and wherever we see suffering on the face of people, let us put on the mind of Jesus and show compassion.